you hold my hand, look me in the eyes. You and me, yeah, that's all I need, and I'll be alright. I'll be right here. I swear that I'll stay here with you. Hold me closer. I wanna stay here with you. All that we have is each other now. I promise I won't leave your side. Be who you are and you'll be enough. If you're giving me your love, giving me your love.
So Jace is about to be 6 months old, and I am finally here to do a birth story. But first, let's see what new pieces I've got from Ana Luisa. Alright, so we've got 3 little thingies in here. Let's do one of the small ones first. Earrings. Oh, they're so pretty. They're little hoops with these little hearts dangling. OMG. These are so cute. I have my like little chain link looking earrings from Ana Luisa that I've been wearing 24/7 for weeks now because they're like so cute, so simple, so comfortable. Let's switch them out. One of the things that I love about these is how easy they are to like put in and close. You don't have to worry about losing like the backing or anything, and they stay closed super well. They feel very like sturdy in there. Gonna do the other small one. What's this? I think this is a bracelet. Nice dainty little bracelet. I've been wanting to get into bracelets for a while now because I never really have. Last but not least, oh, it's actually another pair of earrings. These are so cute too. Very similar to these ones. All right, these earrings are like little hoops with little gems all down them. And then they also have little danglies, but one is a moon and one is like a little star constellation. Now to get into the birth story, I am going to like kind of quickly recap / touch on my previous 2 births, but mostly talking about Jace's, just kind of to compare a little bit. So I'm gonna go into my notes where I have all my notes that I took during each birth. My first 2 daughters, I had London, my oldest, was born August of 2018. And then our middle child, Ashlyn, was born June of 2020, so she just turned 3. And then Jace here was born December of 2022. The main difference from the 3 of my births is my first 2, my daughters, were both inductions, and Jace was actually like spontaneous labor, like he came on his own. My labors jumped and got shorter each time. My first daughter was an emergency induction, so basically I went in for my 39-week appointment with my OB. They measured my stomach, did the fundal height, and was like, you're measuring behind, we want to send you for an ultrasound to get some measurements. So they sent me for an emergency ultrasound, I think a day or 2 later. Estimated that she would weigh around 4 pounds, and they, I guess, like nobody really explained much to me. They kind of just did the ultrasound. She's like, okay, I'm gonna send this stuff to the doctor to look at, and I'll come back and talk to you after he's reviewed it. And was like, yeah, they want you to go straight to the hospital for an induction. didn't really give me like a full reason why. So I got admitted into the hospital around 3 p.m. On August 16th. When I was admitted, I was only dilated to 1 or 2 centimeters. They started Pitocin at about 4:45 that day. They did a Foley bulb at 5:15, and then my water was broken at 3 a.m. Got the epidural at 7:30 a.m. So I actually went quite a while without an epidural for that birth. That was the longest I went without the epidural. Actually, I mean, if you say I started, I'm gonna go from when I started Pitocin. I started Pitocin at 4:45. So from 4:45, 5:45, 6:45, 7:45, 8:45, 9:45, 10:45, 11:45, 12:45, 1:45, 2:45, that's 10, 2:45, 3:45, 4:45, 6:45, 8. So I went about 8.5 hours before I got the epidural. I started pushing at 4:25 and she was born at 5 p.m. August 17th. So I pushed for about 45 minutes. And overall, from the start of Pitocin to when she was born was about 24 hours. So my first labor took 24 hours with 45 minutes of pushing. And London was 6 pounds 10 ounces. So Ashlyn's birth was an elective induction. Basically, we had London. She was almost 2 at the time. We still lived in Ohio at the time. We didn't have anyone nearby that we trusted to keep London while I was in the hospital, and I was terrified that I was gonna have to go give birth by myself and Christopher would have to stay at home with London because we had no one else to watch her. And then towards the end, this was also like during the peaks of COVID, so my original plan was if I absolutely had to, I was going to bring London with us to the hospital and hopefully they would let her stay. But then COVID hit and they got really strict on visitor policies and all that stuff, so that wasn't an option like at all anymore. And so towards the end, we talked with his grandma who lives here in South Carolina and was like, is there any way you could come stay with us for a few days and then watch London while we go to the hospital. So she came to Ohio to help us out, and I scheduled an elective induction for at 39 weeks, which, going back, London was born at 39 weeks and 2 days, I believe, with the induction. And then Ashlyn, I went in for the induction. I was 39 weeks that day. It was a scheduled elective induction at 8 a.m. on June 5th. When I got there and they got me like checked in, he's getting cranky. I sat here for forever waiting to be able to film because London and Ashlyn were being too loud. And then I finally got them to go upstairs and play so I could film, and it had been so long that now Jace is tired, but he doesn't, like, he's fighting it, so he's cranky. I got checked in and everything, and then around 9 a.m. when they checked me, I was 3 centimeters dilated. So I was a little bit more dilated before the start of induction compared to what I was with London. But then they started Pitocin at 10:20 a.m. Jace will be so tired, but continue to fight his sleep, and you just have to like force him to stay still long enough to fall asleep. These chairs are not comfortable to be stuck sitting at for this long. 10 years later. Backtrack. 2 other things I want to note. With London, I don't have like any footage. My mom was there. My mom and my grandma and Christopher were there in the room while I was pushing. And my mom was supposed to be filming, but what happened was she was holding the phone. It was on Christopher's phone, which he lost all of his stuff, so. She was holding the phone and she was recording. And then when London was born, she went to stop recording to take pictures and realized that she, like, when she pressed to stop recording, she was actually pressing to start recording. So that whole time before, it wasn't actually recording. So But I wasn't really doing YouTube then. I didn't fully start doing YouTube until London was like a newborn slash like around a month old. There's that. And also the other thing with London's birth is I did have like a minor tear with her that required like about 3 stitches. Back to Ashlyn now. Pitocin was started at around 10:20 a.m. Then they broke my water at 1:10 p.m. and I got the epidural at 2:30 p.m. and then around this time things started to pick up a little bit. At 3:15 I was 4 centimeters, and then at 6 p.m. I was 7 centimeters, and around this time Christopher actually left to go get food for himself. I started to like progress really quickly, so he actually almost didn't make it back in time for Ashlyn. He got there, I don't remember what time it was, but he got there, he was cutting it kind of close, because at 6 p.m. I was 7 centimeters, at 6:30 p.m. I was 10 centimeters, and my doctor was actually on call, so then I had to wait for my doctor to show up. And with Ashlyn, I had the epidural, but it only like worked really from the waist down, so I didn't feel anything like from the waist down, but I still kind of felt pain in my stomach area. It wasn't like super like absolutely like painful, but it was definitely very uncomfortable. And so I sat there, like at first I was kind of waiting on Christopher, then I had to wait on the doctor to come. So I was laying in bed fully like dilated, like she was ready and I was just like not pushing. And basically as soon as the doctor came in and like got ready and was like, okay, I'm here, we're ready, you can push whenever you want to, or whenever you have your next contraction or whatever. So once the doctor got there and they had everything set up, I had 1 contraction. She came out in that 1 contraction, like I barely had to push, she just came out, which I guess I have to thank like me having to sit there while fully dilated for so long waiting for everyone to be ready, because it kind of helped me not have to push as much, because I also didn't have any tearing with Ashlyn. She literally just came out in 1 contraction. And she was born at 7:10 p.m. and she was 6 pounds 12 ounces, so she was 2 ounces heavier than London, which really surprised us, because the first thing I said when Ashlyn was born was, oh my god, she's so tiny, like she's got to be smaller than London. Like I swore she was so small, but she ended up actually being a little bit heavier than London, only by 2 ounces, but still. And at the time I was pretty heavy into YouTube, so I did vlog like all of Ashlyn's birth, and I do have like all of that, which I mean, I love that I have that footage. So that was how Ashlyn's birth went. And then we get to Jace. Here. So when I was pregnant with the Jace and I'm living in South Carolina, I have all of our family nearby, so I didn't have to worry about needing childcare for London and Ashlyn. So with that out of the equation, I really wanted to go into labor naturally. I was like, I'm not going to do an elective induction. I do not want to be induced unless there is like a medical like reason that I absolutely have to be induced. I would absolutely love to be able to spontaneously go into labor on my own and just experience that at least once in my life. And I mean, I got my wish. That was the one wish I did get with Jace's birth. I went to bed on December 26th. I was in bed with Ashlyn, and Ashlyn was being like kind of restless, and she was kind of like moving around a bunch, and she kind of kicked my stomach, and I swore I felt like this weird pop inside of my stomach. Kind of freaked out for a minute, and then I just laid there, and I don't know how long I laid there exactly. I don't know exactly how long I laid there, but I kind of just started to get this weird feeling. So I laid there for a bit, and then eventually I was like, I'm gonna like stand up and like go to the bathroom or something, which I had like this feeling like that whole day and the day before that, I had this like wetness feeling, almost as if my water was leaking, but not enough for like me to really like know, you know. It was just like this weird feeling that I had. So I was kind of like obsessively checking my underwear, like, why do I feel like this? Like, you know, trying to figure out if my water was leaking, but I never really did figure that out. But I got up that night after the pop or whatever, and I went to go to the bathroom. So I got out of bed, went into the bathroom, and went to sit on the toilet. And then, like, as soon as I sat on the toilet, it was just like this huge gush came. And I was like, oh my God, did my water just break? So I was like wiping, trying to see if like there was color. I was trying to see if there was a smell, because they always say that amniotic fluid like has like not really a smell, but it kind of smells like sweet, I think they say, not at all like pee. So I was sitting there like trying to see if I could determine. I was like sure that it wasn't pee, because I'm like, I didn't push any pee out. I didn't make the movement to pee. Like, it just literally like fell out of me. And then I stood up, and I'm still like, at this point I was like 90% sure that my water had broken, but I was kind of second guessing myself still. So I stood up, I went to the sink, I got my phone, and I was like, you know, filming like, I think my water just broke. And like, as I'm saying that and filming and everything, I can feel it just still trickling. So that was like when it really confirmed what it was. And this was at 12 a.m. So my water broke at midnight on technically December 27th. And I went to the game room where Christopher was on the game, and I was like, my water just broke. And he was like, are you serious? Like, does that mean we need to go now? And I was like, I mean, we don't have to rush to go. I'm gonna go get ready. And he like finished out his game. He called his mom and everyone so that they would get the girls. So I went and got ready, like I curled my hair, made sure I had all of my stuff together, made sure I had the girls' stuff together. Christopher finished his game. And then, you know, we like loaded up the car. I'm leaking the whole time. I didn't feel any like consistent painful contractions up until the point of my water breaking. Like for 2 days before that, I was having like kind of contractions, but they were almost more like Braxton Hicks. But after my water broke, I'd say the contractions started coming in pretty regularly about 20-ish minutes later. And then, you know, we got everyone in the car. By the time we got everyone in the car and we were driving to the hospital, which was about a 20-minute drive, they were starting to get pretty regular and pretty painful. Like, they were really uncomfortable. So we decided the game plan was he was going to drop me off at the hospital, which, like I said, is about 20 minutes away. And then he was going to drive to drop the kids off at his grandma's house where they were staying while we were at the hospital. So he was going to drop the kids off at his grandma's house, and then we were trying to figure out if he was going to go pick my mom up and then they were going to come back to the hospital, or if my mom would have a ride. Like, we were trying to figure that out, which the hospital is about like just under 30 minutes from like his grandma and my mom, basically. So I got to the hospital around 1:30. He dropped me off. I went in and was like, yep, my water broke, you know. And they were getting me into a room to check my water and see if they needed to admit me, which at this point I already was 100% sure it was my water. I knew I was staying. I knew I was going to be giving birth soon. And they checked me at 1:40 a.m. and I was 5 centimeters dilated, and they were like, yeah, you were definitely in labor. That was definitely your water. But they did act kind of weird when they looked at the pads that I was sitting on. Like, they were weirded out by the fluid that I was leaking out, and they were weird about it. And they started to kind of get like quiet, and like you could tell that they weren't happy about something, if that makes sense. And then she comes up to me and she's like, it looks like there might have been meconium inside. So basically, we are just gonna have extra people in here during the birth from the NICU. Like the NICU team's gonna be in here when he's born, just to make sure that when he comes out, he's not having any troubles breathing. There's not like anything wrong with his lungs or anything like that. So at this point, Christopher had dropped the kids off. We decided he was gonna go get my mom because the hospital's policies had changed to you were allowed to have 2 visitors with you at this point. Like, you know, COVID's died down quite a bit. Hospitals and stuff are starting to like open up their visitor guidelines and stuff like that. So you were allowed to have 2 visitors in the hospital, which they say you can have 2 visitors during hours, but you can only have 1 overnight. But I guess we weren't really thinking about that, slash we were kind of hoping that it wasn't going to be a big deal if I'm like actively giving birth in the middle of the night. Like I'd understand it more if like it's the middle of the night and you're kind of just sitting around waiting and nothing's happening, versus if it's the middle of the night and I'm literally about to be pushing a baby out. So he went and got my mom and they came back here and they were trying to get into the hospital when I'm laying in the room. This is probably around 3 a.m. and you know, they're calling me. Christopher came in and is like, they're not gonna let your mom up here. They say you're only allowed to have 1 at night. They said they'll let her wait in this room. And then as soon as like the shift change, we'll see who you get. They might be nice and let her come in at like 7 a.m., 7:30 instead of like 8 when the hours technically started, when visiting hours technically started. They were like, you know, if she waits it out in there, they might let her come at this time, whatever. And then, you know, they were debating if Christopher should take her back to her house then. Somehow I guess they kind of decided against that, and my uncle ended up coming and getting my mom and taking her home. And then I was checked at 3:50 a.m. and was 7 centimeters dilated. Actually, backtrack again. With all 3 of my births, my goal has been like, I'm not gonna say no, I don't want an epidural, but I want to try and hold off as long as possible. So when they checked me at first and I was 5, I was like, no, I'm gonna hold out. You know, I wasn't in too much pain. Christopher got back into the room with me probably around 3:15, 3:30ish. I think, and at this point, you know, I was 7 centimeters. I was in a lot of pain. Like the contractions were basically back to back. I was having like no breaks. I sat on the ball for a little bit and had Christopher doing like counter pressure, and I tried to like labor through like that, and then I moved to the bed and I'm thinking that I have all this more time. But then I got to this point where I was in the bed and I'm like in so much pain. I'm crying. I'm like wishing I had all this stuff. I'm like, I need a comb. They say to hold a comb. They'll tell you to hold a comb. And I'm like squeezing the life out of the handlebars on the side of the bed. I'm just like moaning and groaning. Like it hurt so bad and it was just constant. And so they came in and they're like, you're at 7 centimeters dilated. You're basically at like this cutoff point. Like if you wait too long, they're not going to be able to do it. Like this is your last chance. Because if you get to like 8, 9, 10 centimeters, we can't do it. But you also have to get a full bag of fluid in before you can get the epidural. And this takes about 45 minutes. So they told me this at 3:50 a.m. whenever I was 7 centimeters dilated, and I was like, okay, let's start the IV, let the anesthesiologist know that I'm ready for the epidural. So they come in, they start the IV fluids, and literally right after, like, they checked me and said that I was 7 centimeters well, I think actually I asked for the epidural first, and then they checked me and said I was 7 centimeters, and they reiterated, like, you know, it's now or never. And then right after they checked me at 3:50, basically the nurses had time to walk out of the room, and I was like telling Christopher, like, I feel like I need to poop, which I did feel like I needed to poop. And he's like, are you sure that you're not just like gonna push him out? Well, we didn't know it was him. Further backtrack, for those of you that don't know, this was a surprise birth. We did not know the gender we didn't know the gender throughout the whole pregnancy. We were waiting to find out at birth. So they were like, or Christopher was like, are you sure that you need to poop? Like, it might just be the baby coming out. And I was like, no, I need to poop. But I was in so much pain, I could not even move. And I was like, there's no way that I can get up and go to the toilet right now, because I have to figure out this IV coming with me. And I'm in so much pain, and I'm like crying, and I'm just like, but I know I have to poop. Editing this video, and I realized I forgot to mention, me and Christopher have talked about it now months down the line, and I think it's funny. Like, if I had listened to myself about needing to poop, and like tried to go to the bathroom, he probably would have been born on the toilet. It wasn't even 5 minutes. Like, literally, the nurses walked out. They probably had enough time to get back to their station and sit down when I started just absolutely screaming. Like, I was screaming. I was on my side. I had my knees like up and together, and I was laying there holding the sides of the thing, screaming in pain, and Christopher's standing there like so confused, like he doesn't know what to do. And then he's going to try and hit the call button to call them in, but they hear me because I'm screaming. They can hear me, so they rush in, and they're like, you know, let's get you on your back, let's see what's going on, like, I think it's time to push, like, it's time. And I'm laying there, like, I literally like cried to the nurse. I'm like, how do you know? And she's like, when you get like this, it means it's time. Which, I mean, it was time. So she was like, can we get you to your back? And I was like, I can't, like, I can't move. I was literally laying on my side with my knees pulled in and like together, like almost a fetal position, but not as like tight. And my body just started pushing. Like, I wasn't trying to push. It was like I had no choice but to push. It was like partially my body was forcing me to do it, but also it was like the only relief that I kind of got was the pushing. And so it was like I started pushing, and at first it was just poop. Like, I definitely did have to poop. Total TMI, but I mean, I don't even care. I'm gonna be brutally honest right now. I know I pooped with London. Nobody will confirm it, but I remember I smelt it. So I'm like 95% sure that I pooped with London. I didn't with Ashlyn. I definitely pooped everywhere with Jace. So I started to push as they're coming in, and at first I'm literally just shitting myself. And then they come in, you know, let's get you to your back. I'm like, I can't. I managed to lift my top leg. So it was like I was basically on my side, but I had my leg lifted up halfway. I don't know that the doctor even made it in. It was literally a blur. I remember all of the sounds, but I remember no visuals of this time. Like, I don't know that I had my eyes closed, but I probably did, because I remember nothing but black, but I remember all the sounds. So I remember, like, I was like, I can't do it. And then I kind of was like, I lifted my leg up, and I'm still like accidentally pushing. Like, I'm not trying to push, but I have no choice but to push. Like, my body's just doing it. And it just, like, I start to feel like the crowning, I guess. At this, like, beforehand, it was all the contractions that were getting me. But as I'm pushing, I can, like, feel this insane pressure. I wouldn't, like, everyone says it's like the ring of fire and you feel like this burning. I don't remember feeling a burning sensation. I just remember feeling like crazy pressure, like literally insane pressure down there. And I was like, he was coming. And I remember I was like, I was out of it, but somehow in the middle of when I first like started like telling Christopher, like, you know, I feel like I have to poop, right about when I was starting to scream, I managed to like halfway open my eyes, grab my phone, like looked at it enough to start recording, and then I kind of handed it to Christopher, and he's like, what do I do with this? And I'm like it literally drives me insane thinking about it. And it like absolutely breaks my heart, but I was kind of just like, you know, just set it on the table, not really thinking. Like, so he took the phone and he set it face down on the bedside table behind him, So it was recording, but it was just like the camera was just pointing up at the ceiling. And I so badly wish that I had either one, just told him, here, hold this and like record, or two, I wish he had thought in the moment, like, I know she wants this recorded, let me pull this out, let me start recording. Or when I handed it to him, he just knew to record what was happening. But everything happened literally so insanely fast, and he was so like confused, like I'm screaming my head off in so much pain, and he's like, I don't know what to do, I don't know how to help you, there's not, like, I can't do anything. Because he was like, he didn't know if he should let me hold his hand, he didn't know if he should touch me, he didn't know what he should do in that moment. So he didn't think about it either. But literally, this is going to probably haunt me for the rest of my life, that I did not have the full footage that I wanted. Like, I recorded stuff up until that point, and I have all of the audio from it, but I don't have any of the visuals of either of us finding out the gender during birth. I'm like shaking, because this whole pregnancy, not knowing the gender, I fantasized about seeing his face whenever we found out what it was, because my gut was saying that it was a boy this whole time, and I was mostly convinced that it was a boy. He was absolutely convinced it was a boy. He wanted a boy so bad, and I wanted to have that moment. I wanted to see his face, I wanted to see my face, I just wanted that footage. And that was kind of what my mom was going to be there for. She was going to be in charge of recording and getting pictures, but they wouldn't let her in until 7, 8 a.m. And we were like, when she left, we were kind of hoping that he would hold off long enough and she could come back and she would be there in the morning, like as soon as she could, and then it was going to be fine. He had other plans. Like, literally, she had just barely got home when this started happening. It's just audio. I start pushing, immense pressure, all I see is black. I'm screaming and pushing. Like I said, I have no clue if the doctor even made it into the room or if it was just the nurses. Like, they didn't have time to get this whole team in there like they were planning to do, because they walk out, oh, she's 7 centimeters, waiting on the epidural. And 5 minutes later, she's screaming her head off, rush in, the baby's coming out. So I'm pushing, I managed to get my leg up. I'm still pushing. I pushed for, it was probably only like 2-3 minutes at most. And I mean, he comes flying out. I shit everywhere. So he comes out. Then, as soon as he comes out, you can hear me in the videos like crying, like, what is it? What is it? What is it? And the other thing that bothers me is the whole pregnancy, the plan was when the baby's born, Christopher gets to announce the gender. Like, that was the plan. But in the heat of the moment, I'm like, what is it? What is it? What is it? I didn't get the chance. Like, I thought that it was gonna be like, okay, you're 10 centimeters, let's get you set up, we're gonna be getting ready to push soon. And I was gonna look at them and be like, okay, we don't know the gender. When the baby comes out, let daddy look and let daddy be the one to announce it. And like, it was gonna be this whole thing. But it happened so fast, and the baby comes out, and I'm just like, I'm basically on my back at this point, and I still only remember seeing blackness, because I was in so much pain that I just had my eyes closed. And it was like, I felt a lot of relief when he came out, but not completely. Like, I still felt like cramping and contractions, they were pretty uncomfortable still. But as soon as he came out, I was like, what is it? What is it? What is it? And one of the nurses started to say it's a boy, and then I believe Christopher said, yeah, it's a boy, something like that. Like, you could hear that he was excited. He teared up a little bit. They put him on my chest, and at this point I was like, crying, like, oh my god, it's a boy, like, basically like that kind of thing. I can't believe that just happened. And I was like, I'm so sorry, I pooped everywhere, whatever. And then, like, So they put him on my chest. The whole meconium thing ended up being fine. Like, he didn't need any extra assistance. So they had him on my chest, and as soon as they put him on my chest, Christopher grabbed my phone and turned it around. So I have the audio from him being born, and then I have visuals or whatever from like once he was put on my chest, when Christopher grabbed my phone and aimed it at me and Jace, and then like it showed him being on my chest. He stayed on my chest for a while. You know, we might have tried to breastfeed, I don't remember completely. It was probably about an hour or so. Like, you know, they had cleaned me up. They went to, like, after he was born, they went to pull the little blanket back up over us, and I was like, I held it out and I was like, there's poop all over that, like, don't, like, they weren't thinking, I guess, but literally the blanket that I had was using as a cover that whole time, just, it wasn't solid, okay? I'm not gonna go too much into detail. I've already said a lot, so you're welcome. Might be a little late, but trigger warning, maybe. I don't know. But anyways, it was covered in poop that wasn't solid, okay? It was not at all solid. And she went to cover me back up, and I was like, I need a new one. So she was like, okay, you know, she removed it. They were cleaning me up with like soap and water, like getting blood and everything off of me, and then they got me a new blanket. One of the like baby nurses came in to weigh him. Long story short, I was 7 centimeters at 3:50 a.m. Nurses go out, I start screaming, nurses come in. Jace was born at 4 o'clock on the dot on December 27th. So literally I jumped from 7 to 10 in 10 minutes. Never had the chance to get the epidural. I only had the IV in for 10-15 minutes. So didn't make it to the epidural. I gave birth without an epidural. Which, I mean, I always wished that I could do that, but I wasn't sure that I ever actually could. And then, you know, like I was gonna get the epidural, but I gave birth all natural without the epidural on complete accident because I was waiting on the epidural. I just didn't have the time. You know, looking back, I'm glad that that part of it happened because I feel like my recovery was so much better. I didn't have to wait for my legs to like regain feeling. I didn't tear anything, so I didn't require any stitches. And, you know, like I felt a lot of pain. I felt the contraction so bad. I felt a lot of pressure when he was coming out, but almost all of it was relieved once he was out. But, you know, all I could feel was like a little sore down there, and like, you know, it was painful when they were like pushing on my stomach, and getting the placenta out was kind of painful. So looking back, I'm glad that I didn't have the epidural. It's just like it was painful in the moment, and it happened technically on accident. So born at 4 a.m. he was 6 pounds 13 ounces and 20 inches long, so technically the biggest baby. He was 1 ounce heavier than Ashlyn. I will forever be heartbroken that I don't have all of the footage that I want though. And literally, like after he was born, like once it got me all cleaned up and everyone left, and it was time to start like calling our family and like surprising them. Like we were FaceTiming all of our family and just like, you know, pulling it to him and showing that he was here and like being like, surprise, you know, because we didn't tell anyone that I was in labor. The only people that knew was like his mom and his grandma knew, obviously, because we had to wake them up to drop the kids off, and then my mom knew because we got her up to try and get her to come to the hospital. As soon as like everything calmed down and all the nurses and everything left, so we called my mom, and you know, she knew that I was in the hospital, but she was not at all expecting me to be calling to tell her that the baby was born. So like, you know, she picks up and she's like, I'm sorry that I couldn't be there, and like, you know, they wouldn't let me come back. And I just like panned over to him, and she was like, oh my god, what, like you had him, like what? And like, you know, it was the whole, I didn't have time for nothing, it happened so fast, no epidural. And she's like, oh my god, that's insane, blah blah blah. So literally, like, she had barely just gotten home before we were calling and saying he's here. And the thing is, looking back, they were debating how she was gonna, like, if she was gonna stay in the waiting room or if Christopher was gonna take her home or what. But they ended up deciding, like, she waited in the waiting room for a little bit, and then my uncle came and got her and took her home. Had Christopher been the one to take her back home like they almost did, he would not have made it for the birth. Like, he would not have been there when Jace was born because of how fast that happened. So thank God that things worked out that way and he wasn't the one that took my mom home. Otherwise he would have missed that whole thing. But here's Mr. Man. He'll be 6 months in a few days. What's today? Today's the 16th, so he'll be 6 months in 11 days, which is absolutely insane how fast time goes. But I like to call him my little special baby. Like, I don't want to say miracle, but he's like my little rare baby because 2 things. My water broke first, which statistically is pretty rare. You know, you start getting contractions, you go to the hospital or whatever, or, you know, your water breaks or the hospital breaks your water. But usually contractions start first. Pretty unlikely that your labor will kick off with a dramatic whoosh of fluid. In fact, only about 15% of women have their membranes rupture at all before labor begins. So usually your labor starts with contractions. So with him, my first real sign of labor was my water broke, which happens in about only 15% of women. He was due on December 27th. My water broke at 12 a.m. on December 27th. So I was exactly 40 weeks when my water broke, and then he was born at 4 a.m. that same day. So he was born on my due date. And only about 5% of women actually give birth on the exact date that they were due. So 15% chance of my water breaking to start labor, 5% chance of me going into labor and giving birth on my due date. Both of those things happen. So I like to say that he's my little rare baby. So he was born at 40 weeks exactly, at 4 a.m., December 27th, weighing 6 pounds, 13 ounces. And he was a boy. We didn't know, but he was a boy. That's the story of how Jace Brian Decker was born. Huh. And now you're only 6 months old. So hopefully this video didn't end up being too long, but there was a lot of information to get through. So that's my birth story, recap of my first 2 and the full story of him. If you want to go back and watch my in-depth birth videos that I filmed after London and Ashland, I will have those linked somewhere up here most likely. And also, don't forget to check out Ana Luisa and their website. They have so much beautiful jewelry. I've worked with them several times, some of you may know, and I've loved every piece that I've gotten from them. Very sustainable, very beautiful and dainty and simple, and they last very well. I've had some of their pieces for, you know, well over a year at this point with no issues. So I'm gonna have a link in the description box if you want to check them out, and you can use my code TheDeckers20 for 20% off. If you are in the market for any jewelry for yourself, for your mom, for your friends, whoever, for your kids, doesn't matter, I definitely recommend checking them out and using that link and or my code so you can get 20% off and save some money on some gorgeous jewelry. I gotta pee.
Give me love, give me all your love, give me all your love.